Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Clarify your comments about injections of disinfectant.
No, I was asking a question sarcastically to reporters like you, just to see what would happen. But I was asking a very sarcastic question to the reporters in the room about disinfectant on the inside. But it does kill it, and it would kill it on the hands, and that would make things much better. That was done in the form of a sarcastic question to the reporters.
Wait, what? It's all anybody could talk about this weekend. And I'm like, do we not have other things that we've got 50, almost 55,000 deaths, probably more than that, heading towards 1 million people that are currently infected. And then on the other side of things, something vitally important is we still aren't back to work. Still aren't back to work. But that's all anybody talked about. To the point now where Trump's like, maybe I won't even do this anymore. Which, quite frankly, I think that's just too much. I think, it's way too much. I don't think we need a briefing every day. If you want to bring Fauci and Birx and Pence out, who's supposed to lead this thing, and let him do it, those 2 or 3 people do it, and whatever other person that's going to be part of the military or whatever, that's fine. You don't need to be there every day. Well, we need somebody like that. No, we don't. The reality is all of us want to hear from the scientists and the doctors. If you come out, it's going to be business. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be a jerk. Here's the reality of it. You're not great at empathy. Now, you might have empathy, but you don't show it the way that I think a lot of people want you to show it. And that's totally cool. I got no problem with that. A lot of people out there, you call it the fake news. Whatever, the establishment media that doesn't like you but loves what you bring them. They paint you as this guy who hates everybody except for a very small few amount of people, and that you have no heart. I don't buy that. But I don't think you show it very well. And remember, it's not about what you say, it's how it's taken, and then it's how it's written.
There's a little bit of a difference by saying, Hillary Clinton's the worst person on the face of the earth, she's crooked Hillary, and saying, hey, why don't you go get Clorox? And you saw the lines of people going to get them from stores, people calling.
Which, by the way, he never said go get Clorox and inject yourself. Another BS thing that was ran with. Did he say inject it? Yes, he tries to spin it on. But the reality is it was none of that stuff. But the empathy thing is real.
They're first responders. That is where you get into a public health concern. And quite frankly, the biggest issue for Donald Trump in all of these briefings is a lack thereof. The president is a little hard, frankly, at showing empathy. And that is what people are looking for right now. It's not something Donald Trump does too well.
No, that's true, right? He just doesn't show empathy well. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Doesn't mean you don't care. Any normal person realizes, no, look, I've got a buddy. He is the sweetest, nicest guy in the world. You first meet him, you think he's the worst person I've ever met. He's a jerk. Then you get to know him, you're like, he's a really good guy. Some people just don't have that. Doesn't mean they don't care, but there's a certain side of things that they just don't show well. That's Trump. That's Trump. I don't think we need these briefings every day from him. I think he shows up once a week, maybe a Sunday, gives a big briefing, and the rest of the week, unless it's something absolutely must happen, then you do it. Outside of that, we move on with our lives. Let everybody else handle it. The Pence of the world, the Fauci, the Birx, those are the people that a lot of people want to hear from. And I don't need to see the media asking gotcha questions and battling with the president, because then he gets into it. They like it. It becomes numbers. And the reality is you and I get nothing out of it. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Feel free to tweet at me. All that being said, they're slowly but surely starting to reopen some things. Maybe, kind of, nationwide. People are peeking out their doors going, should we or shouldn't we? I mean, we can, but how do we?
all over the state of Georgia, including the Plaza Theater behind me. Theater owners presented with an option if they want to open up tomorrow. But as you'll find out, a lot of them are saying thanks but no thanks. Check out the feature right now. Flatten the curve. The owner telling me that there is no way they're going to let a bunch of people inside into a space with others that they don't know. We talked to restaurant owners as well, all sorts of business owners who are weighing this very difficult question right now. To open or not open?
Yeah, you can tell he's got a mask on. But to open or not open, that is a really good question. And there's a lot of things that go into that. It's not just whether or not, okay, will people even show up? Am I going to be bringing people in here and they don't, what is anybody even going to show up here? How do my people handle this? How do they not handle this? Well, that's a weird thing. And as a business owner, you've got to think about a lot of different stuff. Right? You've got to think about a lot of different things, not just the business aspect of it, which is really important. Now, the business aspect of it is very, very important. But what about liability? That's something else that I've already seen commercials on my local TV for coronavirus lawsuits. I'm seeing them. Did you go in somewhere and get the coronavirus? First of all, how would you know where you even got the coronavirus? But it's aimed at people who have it, or, that they went somewhere, they don't work somewhere, but they went somewhere and they got it there, or in particular, employers and their employees.
There's a lot of concern out there about what could happen if someone comes into your restaurant, comes into your retail store, and ends up getting sick. Are you going to be liable? Could you be sued? The answer to that question is we're not sure. And so that's a conversation that's happening right now. The top White House economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, said on Friday he doesn't think that small businesses should be held liable if that were to happen.
It's tough. He really wants some sort of, he wants immunity for all of them and say, look, if you're going to open and people want to come back and they want to work, what about giving them a pass? Because it's going to be, let's be 100% honest. I ask this question on a daily basis to other people I work with. If you have started to feel symptoms from it, then you find out, a week from now you have it. Would you know where it came from? Could you be 100% certain? Where did you catch this? You don't know. Could have caught it anywhere, right? Could have caught it at the pump when you went to get your gas. You could have, if you go to work, you could have got it there. Could have passed somebody in the hallway who sneezed. I mean, you just don't know. But it doesn't matter. So now the question for everybody is, how do we open up? And that's going to be the big question moving forward. What does it look like? How do we open up? When do we really get open? What does that even look like? How far is this social distancing going to go? Are we talking months? Are we talking weeks? Are we even talking years? The vaccine side of things, the more that they delve deep inside of this, the more they're starting to realize that it's not 100% certain that we're going to get a vaccine. And even if we do get one, it's not going to be 100%. It'll be probably a little bit like the flu. The flu works because herd immunity. Secondly, the vaccine. And then you've got therapeutic treatment. So enough people have had the flu after a while that usually it's not as severe. Enough people then have got the vaccine. So that's kind of like having a mini herd immunity. And then when people do get it, we do have a therapeutic treatment with Z-Pak and a few other things that make it so it's easy to treat compared to something like this. But think about this for a second. Beginning of this month, we're at what? About 4,200, 4,300. Who knows how many really coronavirus deaths. We're heading into May, and we're heading towards 55,000. We may get to 60,000 by May 1st. And it's in 1 month. That's a big number. I mean, heart disease and cancer still kill more daily than this, but that is still a huge number when you think about it. Now things are starting to heat up. Is there something to this being a seasonal thing? And as it starts to warm up, maybe, just maybe, especially with the interactions outside of things, that you start to see this thing slowly but surely die off, at least for a short period of time if it is seasonal, and then reappear in the fall. It's a possibility. A lot of things we know and a lot of things we don't know. And the more that we think we know, the more we find out, well, we're not quite sure. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You tweet at me. I hope you had a good weekend. It was a nice weekend. It was 100. I don't know about you, Phil. What was the weather like there? We got up to 105 yesterday.
I don't even think we broke the 70s over the weekend.
105, Phil. Just to let you know what 105 is like. I went for a walk last night. We all went out for a walk. It was 101 at like 7:15. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there. If this thing is not good with the heat, welcome to Arizona, baby. Just saying. Oh, my goodness. I work with an amazing organization, Wounded Paw Project. We're going to talk about pet adoptions are up big time, but what they do is something so amazing. They rescue animals that would be euthanized, train them. So just dogs that hey, they're getting ready. We have nowhere to put them. We're going to euthanize them. And they're like, nope. We think we can take this dog and make it a service dog. So shelter dog to service dogs. And it started out for veterans. Now it's moved for veterans, first responders, and their family. And they need your help. It is an amazing organization, and the undertaking of what they're going through is incredible. But they do need your help. Now, you can take action today and turn your extra car, truck, RV, even a boat into a vehicle for change. Great tax-deductible gift. You're going to be saving a paw to save a life, which is their motto. They take those proceeds and they use to protect, advocate, and transform shelter dogs into service dogs. You can also donate at smile.amazon.com. Set your supporting group to Wounded Paw Project. And they also accept cash. Check out everything and the great works they're doing at woundedpawproject.org, or go to woundedpawproject.org, or call them. Talk to them. Say, hey, how can I help? 844-678-4PAW, 844-678-4729, or woundedpawproject.org. Chad Benson Show.
Don't let the Washington Beltway strangle you. This is where the exhausted majority comes to refuel, realign, and reevaluate. This is Chad Benson.
Given how much talk there's been and how quiet both North Korea and China have been, my guess is there's probably something wrong with his health, which wouldn't be surprising, right? I mean, he's morbidly obese, he smokes, he's had gout in the past.
Yes, he has. Rumors, too, that he likes to have a little bump every now and then. For those of you guys not familiar with the 80s, he's do a little cocaine. His entire family has always had this indulgence in the vices. When his dad was alive, he was the single biggest buyer of Hennessy in the world. Think about that. Soak that up for a second. They like to party, to eat, while the rest of their country is starving. The North Koreans enjoy a good time at the top of the mountain. The question is going to be who? I said last week, it's his little sister.
And the question becomes whether or not his sister could take over. That's why you've heard her name sort of thrown around so much in the last week or so. The problem there is that North Korea is pretty reactionary, quite honestly, when it comes to gender norms. And so there's a lot of discussion about whether or not the old guard in North Korea would accept the ascension of a female.
And that's about the big side of it. She is his actual sister. Now, he's got Kim Jong-chul, Kim Jong-nam, and Kim Sol-sung, but the one that he likes is Kim Yo-jong. That's little sister. She's in charge of... She's in charge of a lot of... She's got the best job in the world. She's the deputy director, the first one, of propaganda and agitation. Figure a woman would get that. Still, though, there's it's still a man's world over there. It's still a man. How funny would that be, though? Soak this up with me, kids. If they had a female dictator before we had a female president. It's kind of funny.
They have more nuclear weapons, more delivery systems than they have ever had in the past, and we have to be very strong and very tough when it comes to North Korea, no matter who the leader is.
Yeah, that right there is Chuck Schumer. How did they get those again? Oh, that's right. We gave them everything in the early 90s, and they promised they wouldn't do anything, like 93, 94. And we're like, oh, this will be great. Madeleine Albright's going to go over there, shake their hand. Everything's going to be good. We'll give them everything they want. And then they got them, and then they were like, uh-oh, we're going to keep your stuff you gave us too. And they've been frozen out even more. It's ugly. It's nasty. It's not going to get any better. And you don't know what kind of battle that can go on, too, with them. But what we do know is we know nothing. We figure something's kind of wrong, but we're not quite sure what it is. He's been worried probably about the coronavirus. And even though they've not had any, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, people that have tested positive for the coronavirus probably have had a lot more than that. And a couple weeks ago, when you did, or months or so ago, when you saw him out, he had everybody around him wearing a mask. So they are worried. But whether or not something's gone wrong, very tight-lipped. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Feel free to tweet at us. For those of you guys not keeping score, Biden's running for president, and everybody's getting on the bandwagon.
I'm proud to endorse Joe Biden for president, a leader who is the personification of hope and courage, values, authenticity, and integrity.
I saw like a breaking news over the week, like she had, like people were endorsing, and then this today, and I started laughing. I thought to myself, that's like Scottie Pippen saying, I don't want Michael Jordan to do well. I'm not on his team. Right? It's like that's breaking news. You're endorsing somebody from your team to be president. Breaking news. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show, your Twitter. Best soundbite I've heard in a while. Straight ahead, Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
The United States is now the country that has suffered most. That does not mean that there is the worst ahead for many other countries.
Yeah, Fauci, we are the country that has suffered the most. Got off to a not such a great start. We always knew we were, and we're the country we know that has suffered the most. I still think China has lied completely about all the stuff that's gone on there. We'll touch on that in a little bit, but we didn't get off to the best start.
The test in the United States, obviously is very clear to everyone because of the publicity that it has gotten, that we got off to a difficult start with regard to testing.
Yeah, and we need to do better. We have to. If we're going to get out there and get back into the normal way of life, and that is going to be, normal is not anywhere around the corner, and it has nothing to do with half the country. I think half the country would jump at the opportunity to just get back out there and live their life. But there are going to be a lot of people out there that are going to be psychologically afraid to get out there, afraid of what they may or may not catch, what they could pass on to somebody, what may potentially come down the road that with the coronavirus that may cause us to shut down again. So they're going to be afraid to spend money. There's a lot that goes into this, but we've got to do better at testing.
But clearly we are much better off today than we were last week, and we will be much better off a week or 2 or 3 from now, as now we have the capability with the private sector getting involved in the making and the distribution of tests.
But again, the testing means very little. It's a numbers count at this point in time. We do not have a treatment. We do not have a vaccine. So we're just counting. That's pretty much what we're doing. We're counting. You knowing you have it may cause you to act differently. So you quarantine yourself, you isolate yourself. But it doesn't, the doctor's not doing anything different for you. Just telling you to take liquids and maybe try a couple different over-the-counter things. And outside of getting some experimental stuff, the way that they're going to approach this is that way. Now, if we had a treatment, totally different. We do not have a treatment. And because we do not have a treatment, this is what it is. Will it get better? Yes. Are we going to be in a better position sooner rather than later? Yes. But when we get back to what it is that we think our life is going to be, what exactly does that look like from the business aspect of it? This is Barry Diller, pretty successful guy. We're talking about a guy that was very successful, a man who has run everything you could think of, from movie studios to television studios. He's worth $4 billion. I mean, this guy, I don't know. You heard of Expedia? Have you heard of Fox Broadcast, USA? Yeah, this cat. Talking about it. Because for Trump, the snapshot of let's flip on the light switch and away we head, that's not real. And Trump knows that. But you got to have some confidence. Trump's in a much different position. You can go out and say some things in other positions that you can't say as president, that you don't want to hear from your president. Hey, guess what, guys? Life's going to suck for 2, 3, 4 years. It's awful. You don't want that. You want to know that we're going to get through it. We are going to get through it. We're going to be better for it. We are going to be better for it. But it may take a while. That's a tough thing for people to understand.
The White House says the jobless rate is likely close to 16%. But then they say at the same time, the economy is about to bounce back as soon as this summer.
There's no chance. I mean, certainly this summer. I actually think the summer is kind of going to be a petri dish. There's going to be all sorts of experimenting going on, and we'll experiment with what does social distancing mean when there is no real distancing, certainly in the cities. So I think it's going to be a period where it's going to be a big mess.
And that's very true. Because we don't know. Because every state's going to be different. Arizona may be different than, say, Utah. Utah may be different than Texas. Texas is going to be different than California. California may be way different than New York. We don't know what it looks like. So it's hard to put some sort of what it's like going to bounce back and snap and boom and away we go.
September, possibly, I think. You'll see some things economically return. I think people will be going back to work by Labor Day. And to anyone who thinks that this economy is going to bounce, it can't. The damage that's being done is catastrophic.
Yeah. And it's going to be ugly. 2008, you'll wish for 2008. You'll wish for 2008. I've been saying it. People are like, no. Look, there are going to be some companies out there. They're going to bounce back. They're going to change some of their business models. They'll survive through here. But a majority of companies and a lot of individuals out there are facing some stuff that's coming that is going to be huge. And that trickle down effect that, you'd say, well, it's not, it's a tsunami. It's going to be a tsunami effect.
You have to have widespread bankruptcies because you have no revenue, essentially, for an enormous number of businesses. And I think that established businesses, Expedia, which had basically a $10 billion cost base, went from a day when it would have $250 million in sales to basically zero. But of course, you're going to have a massive amount of businesses that can't return, businesses that go bankrupt. It's inevitable. And hopefully the government will, so to speak, pick up the tab.
Barry Diller. He's right. And some businesses and business owners that are choosing, hey, I'm going to punt. I did well, but at this point in time, I don't know what it looks like on the other side, because I've talked to several business owners that even if they can make it through this, which some of them can, they say, I don't know if I can make it through another one. And I don't know if there's going to be another one, another shutdown, another situation where we all have to shelter in place. I don't know. And I'd rather take what I have left and regroup. And once we come out on the other side, then look to maybe do something else. And you'll find a lot of entrepreneurs and business people that will do something like that. But then you've got things like restaurants. I was driving this weekend and take Jack home. As I'm driving, I was listening to a restaurateur, one of the bigger ones in D.C. and New York, and he's got a ton of restaurants all over the place. And he says, we can't open up the way that I think government thinks that, okay, well, if we open up tomorrow, you're going to have social distancing in there. And the way that social distancing is going to work is you may have half the tables. And he starts, going over the things that some people are, you're hearing. I heard from our Governor Ducey here last week, and I've heard it from Newsom, and I've heard it from Cuomo. It's like, well, it'll be half the tables, and people will be wearing masks, and, which is not appetizing at all. But every one of those tables represents a profit point. And restaurants' profit point is very, very slim. And this guy's like, my most popular dish, we make about 70 cents on my most popular dish in some of my restaurants. So you're talking about 3 to 4, maybe 5 to 7% margin. And if you're going to cut off half the tables and think you're bringing back the entire staff, you're fooling yourself. That's not a winning scenario that can happen. It is going to take time for us to get back into the flow of things. And that may take 6 months. It may take a year or two. Every month that we go on like this, you can usually tack on another 12 months it's going to take to get back pre-coronavirus. Vaccine, not 100% sure. So we're not 100% sure on a vaccine. We're not, at this moment in time, at a place where we know we have a therapeutic treatment that will work. And then there's the immunity side of things. Do you or don't you have immunity like you do in so many other things?
It could be as long as years. We have to remember this virus is barely 5 months old, and we need a considerable period of time to study this. We do know, though, based on other coronaviruses, same family, that you can become temporarily immune, and then that immunity wanes.
It's Dr. Jen Ashton. So, like the World Health Organization is like, well, we've got no studies that say that you're immune, you can't catch it again. And I'm like, I no longer listen to you guys. The World Health Organization. I'm putting it out there. I no longer listen to anything you guys have to say because you guys are full of crap. You're an organization, much like the UN, that is just an absolute joke. It is. But will that help? Will herd immunity help? Possible. I mean, we're all trying to get to the same place. Some people want to shelter in place until we find a vaccine. Some people think, okay, well, how about just the elderly and the sick? They shelter in place. And some people say, well, once we get a treatment, we can all go out. Everybody's going to have to make up their own minds. But at some point in time, the breaking point not only comes from going stir crazy, but also there's a breaking point that comes when you start to look and see what your financial situation's like. But that's only as good as what everybody else is. So if you have a small business and you think you're going to go out of business soon and you may not be able to survive, you opening up your doors today doesn't mean people are going to come, doesn't mean people are going to have money. And even if they do, doesn't mean they're going to spend, which is something that, again, we forget. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. I promise you a great soundbite. This is Ron DeSantis. He's like the governor talking of Florida, talking about, well, nursing homes.
Florida's ground zero for the nursing home. I mean, we're God's waiting room. We have a huge number of facilities, a huge number of residents.
What do you do with that? What are you again?
Florida's ground zero for the nursing home. I mean, we're God's waiting room.
We're God's waiting room. If you look at the numbers, and that's something that, especially in certain areas, like California was one, out here in Arizona, some of the build up, that's everybody's crammed together. Confined-ish area. People that are sick in places because of food plants and manufacturing, the food facilities, they get sick. They're in a confined area. Same thing for jails and nursing homes. And a lot of these, especially when you see a jump in deaths and you start to look and say, okay, X amount of people died here. It was a nursing home. It spread like wildfire. Yes, Florida is God's waiting room. Florida's a lot of things. God's waiting room is one of them. But old are very susceptible to this. We have seen that. Look at the amount of nursing homes and how it has gone through there and just eviscerated 50, 60, 70 patients like that. Confined area, nowhere to go, people close to one another, already in a bad situation, usually with frail health, and it's just picking off. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show's your Twitter. You can tweet at me, Car Shield. So I got an older car. I take that, a little bit longer drives. Have no electronics like, it has just a regular radio and stuff, but there's no touch screen or any of that stuff. I've got Car Shield on it because I worry about the transmission and stuff like that. On the other side of things, I've got something more modern, newer, and it does have the touchscreen. Car Shield on both, because the reality is, if something goes wrong, those things are expensive to fix. Car Shield has me covered. With Car Shield, I get 24/7 roadside assistance, a rental car for free while my car's in the shop. And that shop, well, it's a shop that I choose, not them. They get them paid directly. I pay a small deductible. It's beautiful. You call them up. Rates start as low as $99 a month. There's no long-term contracts or commitments. You call them up and you explain to them exactly what you're looking for, what you have, what your worry is, and they've got a price that fits your budget. 800-CAR-6000. Mention code Benson. That's 800-CAR-6000. Code Benson saves you 10%. Or you can go to carshield.com, carshield.com. Use that code Benson to save 10%. A deductible may apply. Chad Benson Show.
No fake outrage here, just the real thing. The Chad Benson Show.
Which actor would you want to play you?
Oh, Brad Pitt, of course. Good evening. I'm Dr. Anthony Fauci. I'd like to thank all the older women in America who have sent me supportive, inspiring, and sometimes graphic emails. Now, there's been a lot of misinformation out there about the virus.
Germ, you can call it a flu, you can call it a virus, you can call it many different names. I'm not sure anybody even knows what it is.
We know what it is.
And then I see the disinfectant. Is there a way we can do something like that by injection?
When I hear things like the virus can be cured if everyone takes the Tide Pod Challenge, I'll be there to say, please don't.
It's Brad Pitt, Saturday Night Live, talking about Fauci said, I want Brad Pitt to play me. There you go. You got your dream. Brad Pitt played you on Saturday Night Live. I don't know who will play him. I was trying to think this weekend. I'm like, who would play him? And then I know exactly who would play him. It was a guy who was on House, the TV show, who looks like a young Fauci. And I'm like, that guy would totally play Fauci. There's no way he doesn't play him. He looks like a young him. You could, with today's modern technology and the way that they do stuff, you could totally get this guy to play him, and it'll be perfect. I think his name is Peter Jacobson. Played Dr. Chris Taub. Huh? That's his name, right? Like, that guy looks just like a young Fauci. Be perfect. Perfect. I think that might be the guy that does it. Won't be Brad Pitt, but I think he's small. Fauci's not a big dude. He's not a big dude. Speaking of entertainment movies, will they or won't they open up? And would you go see a movie, even if there was a movie? Because let's be real, if the movie theaters open up this weekend, what are you going to show? There's not a lot being released, like nothing.
You might not be going to an AMC movie theater until July. The theater chain, which boasts the most locations in the U.S. with over 6,000, says it won't fully reopen until there are big blockbuster movies to show.
All I have for you is a word.
Tenet. Right now, that's Christopher Nolan's Tenet, starring John David Washington from Warner Brothers, scheduled for July 17th, then Disney's live-action Mulan a week later. AMC says in the weeks before those releases, it might slowly open, showing popular previously released movies, but nothing is set in stone.
Yeah, because we won't know what that looks like. And I think as we get through the next month, it'll be clear on what the summer's going to look like through September, especially if you're a study of all history and stuff and you go and look at what took place, even with the Spanish flu. Eventually, the Spanish flu, after the third time it showed up, it did run out of steam. But even in the first two times, it was seasonal. But when it ran out of steam the last time, because every time it mutates, it's a little bit weaker. When it ran out of steam the last time, it just disappeared. March, they had a ton of deaths in America. And by April, it was gone. There was no more people getting it, and it never returned. Very interesting. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show's your Twitter. You can tweet at us. You can text the program as well. I love that. God's waiting room. It's the governor. He said that. What if that lives with him forever now? Ron DeSantis. That Florida's God's waiting room. Yeah, we know that. But are you supposed to say it? I mean, you're not lying. You're telling the truth. But I'm not quite sure people want to hear the truth. Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
And then I see the disinfectant where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number of the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. So we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute, that's pretty powerful.
Last week, Trump, that was Thursday. Friday, expected a battle royale. Came in, 22 minutes later, walked out, no questions. That was it. Good night now. Very different. Earlier in the day when he signed the PPP Paycheck Protection Program bill, quadrillion, gazillion dollars, people did ask him some questions about said remark.
Can you clarify your comments about injections of disinfectant?
No, I was asking a question sarcastically to reporters like you, just to see what would happen. But I was asking a very sarcastic question to the reporters in the room about disinfectant on the inside. But it does kill it, and it would kill it on the hands, and that would make things much better. That was done in the form of a sarcastic question to the reporters.
Sarcastic question to the reporters. I don't know if I buy that. I don't know if I do. Well, what about the UV? Remember the UV thing? Now, we've known for years that UV lights, UV, the sun, kills a lot of things. There's even some companies out there that are testing stuff about inserting certain things through catheters and whatnot. But it wasn't as sarcastic. Who knows? Here's what it was in my mind. He was speaking off the top of his head, throwing stuff out there. He wants to get this thing gone. It is crushing America in many ways. The health side of things, and our healthcare system's under massive pressure in certain areas. And the other side of it is the economic side of things, which it's destroying not just us, but globally, so many places. Thinking out loud. Then he tweets, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I'm okay with that. To be honest with you.
There were no White House press briefings over the weekend, and on Friday, President Trump left the podium without taking any questions. The president has held nearly 50 briefings since February, some lasting 2 hours, facing backlash for comments he made last week about using disinfectant to treat COVID-19 inside humans. The president wrote on Twitter that the briefings may be, quote, not worth the time and effort. For weeks, aides and outside advisors have pushed the president to scale back his appearances or the length of the briefings and let the science and public health experts take the lead.
Yeah. And I think he's still going to come out and be Trump when he comes out. Does he need to do it every day? I don't think he does. And part of the reason is because we know so much. It gets out there long before they get there. Like the worst kept secrets, because you can't keep a secret in D.C. So at this point in time, we kind of know what's going to be coming. So we don't need to have these briefings all the time. I'd rather see Dr. Birx. I'd rather see Fauci. I'd rather see some other experts come up. And you task Mike Pence to lead this thing. Just let Pence do it. And when something big is happening that's an absolute must, then be there. Then be there. Otherwise, let other people handle it. I think it's fair. Has nothing to do with whether or not I just don't want to see you argue. I don't want to see the media argue. I don't want to see you two argue together. There are other things that people want to deal with. Like, how are we going to get this thing rolling? How are we going to get back out there in this day and age and get our economy jump started? How is that going to happen? 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Feel free to tweet at me. You can text the program as well. Cross the country, slowly but surely, they're trying to reopen bits and pieces of our country. For the weekend, California saw a huge rush into the world of heat and beaches. Just a week earlier, right? DeSantis out in Florida allowed some people to go back to some beaches, and they were making fun of Florida. And next thing you know, boom, out head people to the beaches in California with a very warm weekend.
In California, they're countering the heat wave with ocean waves.
I just don't think we have to live in a hole, a cave the whole time. We have to get out.
Unlike L.A. County, where beaches remain closed, the sand in neighboring Ventura is now open for business with restrictions.
You kind of had to drag me down here. I mean, I wanted to get my feet in the water, but it seems kind of early to me.
Early for what? Like, what? You're going to the beach. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what happens at the beach that's supposed to be terrifying. Well, you know what could happen. No, I have no idea. If you're out there by yourself or with your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, and you go out there and you're going to... We talked about last week that paddleboarder being arrested. Paddleboarding like 200 yards offshore. It's like, what's going to happen? Like, how much further away from human beings can you get? And that's one of those wide open places where you can social distance, and that was happening.
The beach was crowded, but a majority of the people that were at the beach, it looked like to us that they were practicing social distancing and enjoying our open space areas.
And that's a battalion, right? One of the battalion's people that's out there looking at that. Now, what is the social distancing and rules at said sandy, wide open beach?
Here, visitors can walk on the sand as long as they keep moving. No sitting or sunbathing allowed.
If folks don't listen, don't follow the rules, what'll happen?
Last resort, we could issue citations, but we don't want to do that.
Across the country, a mix of cabin fever and spring fever are pushing cooped-up Americans to visit parks and beaches.
Just being out in nature brings joy to the soul.
Yeah, she's right. Get out there. It's okay to take a walk. It's okay to do some of these things. I find, like, some of the stuff, like you can go in a community pool, but only one person's allowed in at a time. Well, how does that happen? It's not a community pool. That's your own pool at that point in time. If the heat is actually something that takes this thing on, and I hear so many different things every time I turn around, well, maybe it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, or maybe it does, or they found this, but it's not peer-reviewed, but let's just say it does. The heat with the combination of chlorine should be okay for people to jump around in a pool. But this is what we're facing for the foreseeable future, is people aren't quite sure what they're going to be heading into at all. Governor Cuomo.
It's not about return to yesterday. There's no return to yesterday in life. It's about moving forward. It's about taking your experience and what you learned and bringing it to a positive effect.
Yeah. And we're not going to get back to pre-normal. We're going to have something different. Dare I say something better when we get there. But we're going to get back to where we can go to sporting events. We're going to get back to where we can go to restaurants and not having to worry. We're going to get back to those things. That is going to happen. Is it going to happen tomorrow? No. Is it going to happen 6 weeks from now? I don't think so. But will it happen this year? There's a good possibility. Now, we may have a seasonal situation where this thing comes back, but we're better prepared for it. And we will find a solid, suitable treatment that will help us tremendously mitigate much of what we're already seeing. But you can't watch this freak out fear stuff on CNN 24/7 and think that this thing's a death sentence, that everybody out there, remember, 1 million people out of about 350 million people have caught this here in America. And out of that, about 99% of people survive. And those odds are pretty good. They are. But Bill Maher said it best, it's panic porn. 24/7. That's all you see is death, death, death. They talk about it. And at times I'm thinking to myself, you guys are not giving the entire snapshot. You ever notice when they talk to somebody on the news, in the media, it's never somebody who's had it and beat it, where they go, I didn't even really know I had it, and I just had a little bit of headache and a fever and no, it's always somebody who was on the brink of death and survived, because that sells the story that they want to hear. It is serious for a lot of people. And some people catch this thing, and for whatever reason, even though they're healthy and young, they pass away. Happens too with flu. But when you look at this, it's affecting a certain group of people in particular more than others. The elderly, people with underlying health conditions, and the obese are catching this thing. And it's causing them problems. But you would think that it's a death sentence, and it is not a death sentence. But it's frustrating, I'll tell you that, to watch I have trouble watching any of these shows. I watch some of the Sunday shows, and because we have TVs around the office, they're on all of these things because we have the news department, and they're monitoring everything and doing it. But it's you'll flip around and you're like, oh my God, this is tough. It is. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show's your Twitter. You can tweet at me. MyPillow, Mike Lindell, the owner, founder of MyPillow, is doing something awesome. He's flipped over the production lines, changed everything to PPEs to help the first responders and our healthcare professionals, making masks and things of that nature. He's now doing a BOGO, buy one, get one free on everything. He wants to clear everything out so he has room for all of these things. Here's what you get. BOGO pricing on the Supima MyPillows, the Giza towels and Dream Sheets, the MyPillow towels, the Roll and Go Anywhere pillows, the duvet covers, you name it. Guess what? It's there. Buy one, get one free. You get a 10-year warranty. Everything's made right now in the U.S. of A. And, of course, 60-day money-back guarantee. What? Now, on top of that, you go to the radio listener special page on MyPillow.com, type in code Benson to save big. If you decide, hey, when you're checking out, I'm going to order Mike's book about his life and the craziness and the chaos and how he went from nothing to something, and it's a great story, and in this day and age, we can use something like that. He's going to ship the entire order for free and throw in a $25 gift card for your next purchase. Go to MyPillow.com. Use the promo code Benson. MyPillow.com. Promo code Benson. Chad Benson Show.
You go, boy.
This isn't about right or left. This is just about right and wrong.
Right you are, Chad. The Chad Benson Show.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
Now it's time to find out what's trending. What's trending? Yeah, what does that mean? I mean something, right? Like it's trending on the old internet. What's trending? Let's take a look at what's trending. The magical world of the internet. Let's start with Twitter. Hope Hicks. I don't know what she's done. She must have done something. First thing you think of, is there leaked pictures? No. Something to do about fluff pieces written about her, blah, 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 blah. It's the usual baloney. Lockdown hustle, hashtag all Americans, trending. Duck Dynasty, really, Robert, somebody shot into his house, did a drive-by, and apparently that person has been arrested. What? Yeah. Monday Mood, trending as well. Nancy Pelosi, also trending because she endorsed Biden. I know it's a shock to most that she did that, but she did. Memorial Day, trending. Why? I think people are looking and saying, all right, is Memorial Day when we're really going to open up? Is that the weekend that we're really going to open things up? Maybe, maybe not. Fama to Dine is also trending. If you don't know what that is being used along with hydrochloroquine. And you can find that in things like Pepcid and Prilosec. Yeah, they're trying this. Now, as a treatment to combat COVID-19. It's very interesting, though. You can't just go buy, which people will. People are going to go out and go, oh, my God, Prilosec, I can go buy. The amount of the Famotine that is being put into people intravenously is like 10 or 15 times the amount that you would get in just Prilosec. And it's used in conjunction with hydrochloroquine. So that's what's going on there. That's pretty much it. It's a quiet day. It's a Monday. Things are becoming quieter and quieter every single week. So we start to look out here and see what's going on. And I think right now it's a sit and wait scenario. People trying to figure out where and what they're supposed to be doing. Are they supposed to be doing something? Are they not supposed to be? They're trying to figure out, do I go home? Do I not go home? Things are starting to open up slowly in certain states. The rules are very vague in a lot of those states on what you can and can't do and what should and shouldn't be open and how you handle said situation.
Starting today, you're going to start to see states beginning to open up. Mississippi, Montana, Arkansas, and others. In Wyoming, you can still go to pretty much any restaurant. You can buy books. In some of these places, you'll be able to get a haircut. Maybe somebody will be wearing a mask and gloves as they do it. And the issue is what opens and to what extent.
And that's the big issue. What opens, what extent, what does it look like, and how are people going to be receptive to that? I got to be honest. If it was a theme restaurant and and people wearing hazmat suits to serve your dinner, that's one thing. Your favorite Mexican restaurant or pizza joint, or I don't see that as something people are going to want to do, people serving you with rubber gloves, which do nothing. They don't do anything unless you change them every single time. And the face mask, I mean, we're talking about here in Arizona where they're going to give you the option if you want to go back and get your food yourself, meaning they'll make the food and then you can go back and pick it up so you don't even have to deal with the server. I thought, talk about the potential for liability. That is, do you want to do that? I mean, does that feel like something you want to do? They're talking about all kinds of different things. And I just, we forget that on top of all of the other stuff of people wary to go out places and do certain things and spend money in this time, even if they have any money, you've also got to think about the cost to small business to retrofit in some ways much of their stuff. It's going to be weird. It is, at least for a time being. 323-538-CHAD. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show is your Twitter and your Instagram. It's the Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
You might need to be sequentially tested multiple times in the future until we have a vaccine. We also need a test to be fast, cheap, accessible, and accurate. So ultimately, like a home pregnancy test, and we're not there yet.
No, we're nowhere near there. And that's the thing, is we're not close to that. Some people are like, we need to test everybody. Well, even if you test somebody today, so let's say all of us, producer Anthony, producer Phil, and I, we all test. By tomorrow, that's useless, because you could have it today. I mean, you could catch it later on today, and you wouldn't even know. We'll be able to test fast. And then the immunity. Is there immunity? Is there not immunity? That's another big question, because you hear some people say, yeah, you're going to have immunity. How long? We don't know. The World Health Organization says there's no, we've got no study that shows or any information that says that you have any immunity this whatsoever. And I poo-poo on the World Health Organization, as do most people.
When you talk about these antibodies, we don't yet know whether it's possible to have high level, but antibodies that are weakly effective at blocking re-exposure or reinfection.
So we don't know that. So maybe you can get it again, maybe you can't. I'm sure in some cases people will get it. And I'm sure in some cases some people will just never get it. Let's go back and talk about the original numbers that were coming out in both Europe. They were releasing for us here, the studies in Cambridge, and then the Washington, from the University of Washington, their studies talked about 30 to 50 million people being infected. That means upwards of 300 million were not going to be infected. Why? They would be exposed. They just wouldn't be infected. Why is that? Question that I've asked several health officials, and I'm like, we're not quite sure. Or they give you several different answers, which isn't good enough. But we definitely need more testing. Doesn't mean the testing's going to be perfect, but we're not where we need to be. I think that is the reality. Is no matter how hard we try, we're not at the point where we need to be. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Feel free to tweet at us. Social distancing. We're all doing it by and large, minus a few states like Wyoming, who's not doing any of it because they've had very little issues, and they very, very rural. They build way out and not up. So they've had really no issues. So you can even go into a restaurant there and eat. Life is pretty normal there. Other parts of the country, as we know, not so much. And we're all making different kinds of sacrifices, and we're welcoming ourselves into a new world that will be temporary. But how long will it last, and what's it going to look like?
The idea that you can take the middle seat out of an airplane and have any kind of, quote, social distancing is absurd. You can't. It does not work. Social distancing works when it's complete. What I'd like to know is, do masks work? Giving it or getting it? Because if masks work and we're all ordered to wear them, that's at least something. But the idea that you can make these small areas, theaters or whatever, restaurants, tables 6 feet apart, what about coming in and going out? What about the waiters who serve you? What about all that? I don't think any of that makes any sense.
No, that's Barry Diller again. Very right. Guy's smart, worth $3.5 billion. The idea that it's so weird that you think about all the places you touch that you don't think about. Swipe your card. How many people there swipe their card before you? They're not cleaning that. A lot of the stuff that's being social distancing taking place that's being set up in places like restaurants and your Home Depots and your Lowe's and all of these big box stores and things that we go in the grocery store, that's in many ways there to protect the people working there. At the end of the day, we're going to have to start making certain decisions about our economy and the way that we get back to life. But for every one or two things you do to protect yourself, there's something that you do just out of habit that you don't realize you put yourself in another situation where potentially you could catch it.
Look, the thing is, we're going to have to go through a new kind of, let's call it risk calculation. And that's going to be based upon levels of what we believe is safe and not safe. And we're going to have to be told more practical solutions. So somebody is going to have to say, yes, you must wear masks, period. Or no, take your chances, but the chances are pretty good. There'll be a teething period where we'll kind of get used to this.
And that's true. I mean, we're doing everything we can, and most of what we're doing has very little to do with the individual and all to do with our healthcare system. We want to mitigate the flow of people to our healthcare system so we can flatten the curve, because we have somewhere in our mind X amount of people are going to get this. We hope it runs out of steam. If we can stop them from getting it here, but make it last longer and flatten the curve, it'll be better for our healthcare system, and we may see a better outcome. Maybe. But like I don't get the mask thing. So it's, if I have it, in theory, I can't get it, give it to somebody. But if somebody has it and they're not wearing a mask, in theory, the mask does nothing for me. This is part of the novel side of it, is we don't know really that much about it.
I think the next couple of months, people are going to do it anyway because they ain't going to stay in their houses. They can't stay in their houses or apartments or whatever forever. We'll begin to get out there and we'll learn some stuff. I think with the mistakes that will be made and all of that, and hopefully some authorities telling us what we can and can't do, by Labor Day, we'll be out of it.
Doesn't mean we're back to normal. But we get different messages. And that's tough. Message A is, wear gloves and a mask. Then, 2 days later, it's like, well, they're not really that effective. You have to wear a mask. It could stop you from giving it to somebody, but if you don't have it, the masks are not going to be effective in stopping it. So, okay, and then gloves. Okay, gloves, yeah, they're good, but they're not. These are all things we're going to be learning as we go forward. But we're still at this point where we're not quite sure if it works or not. And that's frustrating for a lot of people.
I do not believe that life has ever changed. I don't believe that this is going to have, at some point, I think this is going to be over, and we humans are going to get back to the life that we had made for ourselves. But basically, we're all going to get together again.
Yeah, Barry Diller, absolutely right. We are going to get together again. Questions that I don't hear being asked, that will have to be asked on a individual basis to the governors who run the states, is when you start to allow people to get back to the normal way, and let's just say by June, this thing's run its course, and if it's seasonal, at least for this season. So we start to get back out there. We start to do things. Say August rolls around, and for whatever reason, there's a little spike in it. At what point do we have to run back into our houses and shelter in place? At what point do we say, you know what, we can't go through this again? And I don't hear any of those answers. And I really, in many cases, I don't hear much of those questions being asked. And to me, those questions are, because we're already in the midst of this. We've already decided this is the way we're going to go. We're in this, so we're going with it. So what happens if the second wave shows up? What does that even look like? How do we deal with that? Do we ignore it and say, well, we've went through the first wave, there's nothing we can do, we're going to have to get back out there and live our lives? Or do we say, all right, after X amount of cases, we're going to have to go back down to sheltering in place and social distancing. And I mean, it's the you don't know scenario. And that's what I think frustrates a lot of people. Not only businesses, but individuals. I would like to know. I think you would like to know at what point in the second wave, if there is a second wave, and by all accounts, they're saying there's going to be a second wave, and it should be in the fall. So the second wave shows up. Okay. Is it the same as it was before as far as how we live our lives, where everybody goes back indoors for X amount of weeks or months, and we're back down to sheltering in place? Or is it, no, this time people who are elderly, those with compromised immune systems or health issues, you're going to have to shelter in place. The rest of us are going to have to work. Some states may take that up. And other states may be going right back to where we are now. I think it's a bizarre situation. And that question isn't being asked, and it needs to be, because the more I talk to not only individuals, but small business owners, they all say the same thing. They're not, at this point in time, we're already in the midst of this. What happens next time? We don't have a vaccine, and we don't have a treatment. You're going to have to give us something. And I don't think they want the surprise of things seem to be getting, I don't want to say back to normal, but they're moving ahead at least. Then what? 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show's your Twitter. Feel free to tweet at me. You can text the program as well. Talk a little NFL and NBA. Will there be an NFL this year? There's a plan as a just in case. The NBA, will there be a playoffs? How would that even look? When will they even think about opening up? Chad Benson Show.
Experiencing separation anxiety? That's dumb. Check out Chad 24/7 at his website, ChadBensonShow.com, and on iTunes, free. The Chad Benson Show. Never feel lonely again.
No decision's been made about the future of the suspended NBA season, but our partners at ESPN say the league is allowing teams that are based in areas that have begun to reopen to allow their players back into facilities to work out. ESPN NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski says teams would prefer players work out in their facilities, but he says some executives are still hesitant.
General manager I talked to yesterday said, I don't want my players in anybody's facility. I don't want them around other players. I don't want someone to get sick in this instance. I still think we're rushing back into this.
Those buildings will be allowed to reopen Friday.
I don't know if teams are going to get out there and start practicing. I don't know what that looks like. I think it's 60-40, not likely the NBA returns. The NHL's looking at doing a few different things. They would love to have a winner this year.
The NHL is looking to finish out the regular season and award a Stanley Cup. They know that staging games in July and August is really attractive to their TV partner, NBC, because the Tokyo Olympics have been canceled and that broadcast window is wide open.
Yeah, so they would like that. Now, how would they go about doing that? Well, much like everything else, they're throwing around, like with all sports. Do we do it here? Do we do it there? Do we allow teams to have, one particular, you can play your games at homes, but no fans? Do we have an area of which we do it?
In the current model, though, the NHL is looking at returning to 4 hub cities. But that's all contingent on whether they get the okay from local health authorities and governments. And of course, nothing can happen until the U.S. and Canada border is open.
There's that. Then on the other side, you got Major League Baseball. Now, baseball should be rocking and rolling. We should have been through the first month of baseball. It should be wide open. People should be excited. We could be looking and seeing what's going on. But the reality is we're not there, anywhere close to there.
Right now, there's a major disagreement between Major League Baseball and the Players Association over what the financial split of the pie would be if, in fact, baseball comes back. And this is of increasing concern both to management officials and to agents that I've spoke with.
Yes. Well, why is that? Well, it's simple. There's only so much money that's going to be made. Baseball is one of the few sports, like basketball and football. If nobody showed up, the money revenue side, because of television, is so massive. While they make money at the gates, 90% of the money comes from television. 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 90% of the money comes from televi it's nothing compared to what they make on the national TV deals. Baseball regional TV deals are huge, but also a good majority of their money comes from the gate. How would that even look? Because that's where the money comes from, the split for the players.
Agent Scott Boras has argued that the 2020 contract should be honored. That would be on a prorated baseball if baseball comes back. The union had Tony Clark put out a statement saying the negotiations are over. On management side, they feel like that given the financial hit that baseball's taken, there needs to be some salary rollbacks.
Yeah, not often that players want to say, hey, here's some money. Difference between football and baseball is everything's guaranteed. So what all these guaranteed sports, hockey, NBA, Major League Baseball, is they're looking at their contracts. And in a lot of these contracts, there's a force majeure. And that will allow them to stop paying, and they could force them into certain situations because of something unforeseen. Each individual may have a don't do something. Like you could break your leg doing this, or you could do that, or all those contracts have something inside per each individual. This would be a blanket thing. So we'll see what happens. And the NFL, now they had their draft last week. NFL's going to be, it's very weird. So you had the draft last week, and normally within the next 2 weeks, the rookies would be heading into camp. They'd have the OTAs, and then they'd have their workouts, and they'd be working out without pads, and the first time they could really get together with their teams. You can't do that at this moment in time. So the question has, of course, risen across everybody is football. Like, what happens if they have to cancel football? Football's backup plan right now, November. They'd start playing games in November, play them all the way through into March, and then have a Super Bowl. College football, it's a little different. They're talking about several different things, including, because the way they look at it, here's the thing about college football. College football is a revenue sport. Revenue sports cover all the other sports out there that don't make a dime. So what would happen is you can't just bring back the football players if the students aren't there. Let's say they decide they can't bring the students back until December or January. What they might do, and what they're talking about doing is, well, what if we have a spring league that kicks off? We do the season, but we do it next year. Football ends in the NFL, and then April, May, June, you've got the college football season. That would be interesting. It would suck to miss everything this year, but then we'd have a huge year next year of sports all the way through. So all of them have some contingency planned, and of course there's always that, no, nothing's going to get done. We're going to have to abandon everything. You're starting to see it in the soccer leagues in Europe. The Dutch league just abandoned their season. The Belgian league has done it. The Premier League's holding on, as are some of the other big leagues over there. But in the next couple of weeks, they're going to start having to make serious choices, and the lost revenue for some leagues will be so massive. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Feel free to tweet at us. I do not believe hockey's coming back. Basketball's interesting. Football, baseball, both are in a situation where baseball hasn't started and football obviously hasn't started, but you can move those around a little bit more. We shall see. But, man, wouldn't it be nice? Just watching that draft last week and seeing the ratings and how huge they were shows you that we're just chomping at the bit for something. Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
clarify your comments about injections of disinfectant?
No, I was asking a question sarcastically to reporters like you, just to see what would happen. But I was asking a very sarcastic question to the reporters in the room about disinfectant on the inside. But it does kill it, and it would kill it on the hands, and that would make things much better. That was done in the form of a sarcastic question to the reporters.
That was done in a form of a sarcastic question to the reporters. Was it or was it not? Yes or no? Answer the question. That's all anybody talked about last week. I'm like, can we talk to somebody who's got like a doctor in front of his name? I don't care if it's Dr. J at this point. Dr. Dre, Dr. J, Dr. Frankenstein, somebody else. I don't need to hear, this doesn't need to be what it became. Trump threw something out there that was on the top of his mind. It was a dumb thing to say. That's the reality of it. It was stupid. We got to move on from it. There are other things. People are trying to figure out how in God's name do we get back to some form of normalcy in a somewhat quick manner so we can start to rebuild what has been broken. How do we do that? That's the questions that people want to ask. We want to know, hey, Dr. Fauci, hey, Dr. Birx, Dr. J, Dr. Dre, I don't care, Dr. Frankenstein. How do we do this? What happens during the second wave? What are you going to tell people? Dr. Fauci is a much more straightforward, straight shooter. Birx, little bit different. She's much more of a politician, even though she's a doctor.
No, when he gets new information, he likes to talk that through out loud and really have that dialogue. And so that's what dialogue he was having. I think he just saw the information at the time, immediately before the press conference, and he was still digesting that information.
Fauci is much more straightforward. No, we can't do that, right? Like, that's a Fauci thing. Birx gets the politics of it all. Fauci's where you get the straight shooting from. Birx is where you get some straight shooting, but you get that with the politics of it, where she can understand that you've got to walk a fine line of, hey, I can't be Debbie Downer all the time and tell the world that this is the way we're going to live the rest of our lives, which sometimes Fauci comes across that way. And readily he's admitted that he's been... But he thinks of it in a much different way than some other people. Birx gets it.
Do you believe the media in this country has been fair throughout this pandemic?
I think the media is very slicey and dicey about how they put sentences together in order to create headlines. We know from millennials and other studies that some people may only read the headlines. Often the reporting may be accurate in paragraph 3, 4, and 5, but I'm not sure how many people actually get to paragraph 3, 4, and 5.
And she's right. We have an attention span of the gnat. We look at something, we go, and then we run with it. And that's all we hear. And then we tell everybody else. We've got to do better. I just want the facts. I don't need Trump to come out every day. I just want the facts. Give it to us. What are we looking at this moment in time? How are we on testing? And give us the breakdown of what the mortality rate is with the average healthy adult human between 21 or 18 and 55 or 65 or whatever, where they're healthy. Not people who are morbidly obese. Not people who have... I just want those numbers. Because as we move forward, I think that's kind of the decision we're going to have to make sooner rather than later. We're going to have to take calculated risk. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You can tweet at us. It's very interesting. People are starting to reopen. Anytime we could throw Al Sharpton in here, always makes us laugh because he's, well, Al Sharpton.
I don't know any barber in Georgia that has 6 feet long arms. How are you going to have social distancing in a barber shop or in a beauty parlor? I mean, let's be serious. You are really telling people put yourself in danger. For what reason, I cannot imagine.
People want to get their hair did. I'm fortunate enough. I don't have any hair. When I do have an hour shave off. A lot of people, they're frustrated. They're frustrated by what they're seeing going on. It's not, and this is the funny thing. People think it's getting your hair done or getting your nails. It's not. It's a certain semblance of normality. I'm getting back out there. Life is a little bit normal. It's a comfort food or a comfort activity that makes them feel good. It's not just, it's something as stupid as getting my nails done or my hair done. It's just a return to something that gives them certain parts of comfort. And for barbers and for other people out there, there's also a situation where they're looking around saying, how do we survive this? So there's two sides of it. Yeah, there are some people out there that are concerned about their looks. They don't care. They would walk through a torrential downpour that turned into a snowstorm uphill both ways to get some sort of beauty thing done. But for a lot of people, it's more than just that. And then on the other side, you do have people out there who have small businesses who are sitting there saying to themselves, I'm losing everything. Something's got to happen.
Well, Reverend Al, you might have a couple $1 million in the bank. Us non-essential owners do not. Only thing we can speak from is our perspective. For the last 2 months, I can speak for myself. I had no income for the last 2 months. I own 3 barbershops, also cut hair myself, and us being out of work is no money coming in at all. In the last 2 months, I have spent over 20 grand in rent and mortgages and, stuff like that.
Yeah. I've got a friend who has 2 salons, pretty big salons. They're shut down. He's having to liquidate a lot of stuff. It's tough. It is. It's that tightrope that everybody's trying to walk right now between health and financial health.
I applied for the SBAs. I applied for the unemployment. I haven't even received a stimulus. So my question to the people out there, what should we do? Should we just just sit back and just wait for the government to bail us out, or take advantage of the opportunity that we have and be as safe as possible and still, make as much money as we can and just play it safe?
Yeah. How does it work? I mean, everybody wants the government to bail us out. And in many ways, the government kind of has to, because they're telling you can't work. They're not giving you a choice. They're telling you shut it down. They're not telling you, well, go at your own risk. They're saying, no, you can't operate. So for that, you've got to do this. But how long does that last? How long does this continue? Frustration is growing. I said that every single person out there has a breaking point. That is individuals, that is business owners, that is mom and dad, that is the kids. Everybody has a breaking point. We realize we're in this, but it never seems to be ending. And with the never-ending side of things going on, I think you're going to start seeing more and more people bubbling up, and I think you're going to start to see more and more states some states are in a lot of trouble. Some cities are in massive amounts of trouble, especially cities and states who have huge unfunded liabilities where they have to pay retirees. They have massive salaries that they're paying out, and there's no tax revenue. So even local and state governments are feeling the pinch. So that's one of the reasons you may see some states potentially hurry back when they shouldn't. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show. It's your Twitter. Feel free to tweet at me. Raycons, best earbuds around. Let me tell you something. Kids are screaming and yelling. You need some peace and quiet, but you've also got to be on a phone call, on some sort of conference call or video chat. Raycons, you're going to be like, thank you. The E25s are the best ones yet. 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, compact design, nice noise isolating fit. So when you're taking those calls or just listening to something where you need to relax, they're there for you. And unlike other wireless headphones, Raycons are both stylish and discreet, so you got no dangling wires or stems. Ray J put this together, another small business entrepreneur who's grown this thing. And when he put this whole thing together, he took it out to his friends like Snoop Dogg and Cardi B, said, try these. Tell me what you think. They love them. You will too. Cost well under $100. And you're going to save money right now. Go to buyraycon.com/Chad. Save 15%. Buyraycon.com/Chad. Buyraycon.com/Chad. Chad Benson Show.
I, you, he, she, it. Lucy is a girl.
Point of personal privilege, please do not use gendered language to address everyone.
Shut up, boo. Ain't nobody got time for this.
This is the Chad Benson Show.
You know, after 9/11, when al-Qaeda attacked America and killed almost 3,000 Americans, we came together to push back, to go after them. We should have the same attitude about China. China is responsible for 26 million unemployed Americans, 53,000 dead Americans, and this is a chance for Congress to come together. We came together to spend $2.7 trillion because of the damage done to our economy due to China. Two goals: get China to change their behavior, and the second goal is make them pay.
Yeah. I think there's something to that. I really, really do. People say, oh, that's not. No, they lied. I mean, the whole world, it's not just this administration. You knew. I mean, we never bought it. You listen to my show. I've never bought this thing one time. I knew they were lying. Now, how long did they lie for? I never thought it was a bioweapon. Could it have escaped from some place where they were doing testing? That's always a possibility. But regardless of how it got out, China is responsible, and the World Health Organization is as well. This is absolutely squarely in the lap of them. Now, our response, we can blame the administration or blame a lot of other things. I mean, we can battle that all day. But the reality is the way that they handled this and covered it up is ridiculous.
The Chinese Communist Party has been stealing America's intellectual property for decades, and they're not going to magically stop in the middle of a pandemic. You know, in almost every state in the union, there are active cases against Chinese nationals. In the middle of a pandemic, what's the most valuable intellectual property in the world? It's the research that our great laboratories and life science companies are doing on prophylactic drugs, therapeutic drugs, and ultimately a vaccine. So I have little doubt that the Chinese intelligence services are actively trying to steal America's intellectual property as it relates to the virus that they unleashed on the world.
Yeah. That's Tom Cotton. And he's right. Now, as far as unleashing, I don't think they unleashed it on the world because it's cost them as well. It's not cost them as much as it's cost us.
The United States is now the country that has suffered most. That does not mean that there is the worst ahead for many other countries.
Dr. Fauci there. But we have suffered the most. And yeah, I mean, they come over here, they have visas. Most of them just want to learn. They have an opportunity education, but there's a lot of them that come over here with other opportunities to impress their masters at home. And we're not talking about the average person in China. We're talking about the powers that be in the communistic world that is. They covered this thing up. People want that dollar bill. They want that thing that China's offering them. and operating over there. The one thing I'll say about Trump is he has looked them in the eye and said, pfft, and we need more of that. We need to figure out what we're going to do. And China, not just us, but the European nations are looking over there. They're all frustrated because they felt this game had been played. The World Health Organization was in on it. And nobody wants to be politically incorrect. You know, at this point in time, screw them. We're not talking about a race. We're talking about a group of individuals who made choices to lie and hide things up. You want to tie it into race? Knock yourself out.
We have trained so many of the Chinese Communist Party's brightest minds to go back to China to compete for our jobs, to take our business, and ultimately to steal our property and design weapons and other devices that can be used against the American people. We need to take a very hard look at the visas that we give to Chinese nationals, especially at the postgraduate level in advanced scientific and technological fields. If Chinese students want to come here and study Shakespeare and the Federalist Papers, that's what they need to learn from America. They don't need to learn quantum computing and artificial intelligence from America.
And I'm okay with that. It's a battle. It's a race. Let's not pretend it's not. Would we have allowed the Soviets in the height of the Cold War to come over here? Probably not. I'm going to say no. And would they have allowed it? No. We've got to be smart about it. And with Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham, I think there's something to that. I really, really do. We need to look at this thing in a much different way. We're training our competition to take us on. That's an odd thing. And the intellectual property, they're not just stealing it here. Remember, if you open a business over there and you want to do some stuff, you've got to share everything with the Chinese government, who then take it and they give it to somebody else so they can replicate it and they hand it back to you. And the next thing you know, the people that you're doing business with are now doing business against you. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show's your Twitter. Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
The United States is now the country that has suffered most. That does not mean that there is the worst ahead for many other countries.
Yeah, Fauci, we are the country that has suffered the most. Got off to a not such a great start. We always knew we were, and we're the country we know that has suffered the most. I still think China has lied completely about all the stuff that's gone on there. We'll touch on that in a little bit, but we didn't get off to the best start.
The test in the United States, I mean, obviously is very clear to everyone because of the publicity that it has gotten, that we got off to a difficult start with regard to testing.
Yeah, and we need to do better. We have to. If we're going to get out there and get back into the normal way of life, and that is going to be, normal is not anywhere around the corner, and it has nothing to do with half the country. I think half the country would jump at the opportunity to just get back out there and live their life. But there are going to be a lot of people out there that are going to be psychologically afraid to get out there, afraid of what they may or may not catch, what they could pass on to somebody, what may potentially come down the road that with the coronavirus that may cause us to shut down again. So they're going to be afraid to spend money. There's a lot that goes into this, but we've got to do better at testing.
But clearly we are much better off today than we were last week, and we will be much better off a week or two or three from now, as now we have the capability with the private sector getting involved in the making and the distribution of tests.
But again, the testing means very little. It's a numbers count at this point in time. We do not have a treatment. We do not have a vaccine. So we're just counting. That's pretty much what we're doing. We're counting you knowing you have it may cause you to act differently. So you quarantine yourself, you isolate yourself. But it doesn't, the doctor's not doing anything different for you, just telling you to take liquids and maybe try a couple different over-the-counter things. And outside of getting some experimental stuff, the way that they're going to approach this is that way. Now, if we had a treatment, totally different. We do not have a treatment. And because we do not have a treatment, this is what it is. Will it get better? Yes. Are we going to be in a better position sooner rather than later? Yes. But when we get back to what it is that we think our life is going to be, what exactly does that look like from the business aspect of it? This is Barry Diller, pretty successful guy. We're talking about a guy that was very successful, a man who has run everything you could think of, from movie studios to television studios. He's worth $4 billion. I mean, this guy, I don't know. You heard of Expedia? Have you heard of Fox Broadcast, USA? Yeah, this cat. Talking about it, because for Trump, the snapshot of let's flip on the light switch and away we had, that's not real. And Trump knows that. But you got to have some confidence. Trump's in a much different position. You can go out and say some things in other positions that you can't say as president, that you don't want to hear from your president. Hey, guess what, guys? Life's going to suck for 2, 3, 4 years. It's awful. You don't want that. You want to know that we're going to get through it. We are going to get through it. We're going to be better for it. We are going to be better for it. But it may take a while. That's a tough thing for people to understand.
The White House says the jobless rate is likely close to 16%. But then they say at the same time, the economy is about to bounce back as soon as this summer.
There's no chance. I mean, certainly this summer. I actually think the summer is kind of going to be a petri dish. There's going to be all sorts of experimenting going on, and we'll experiment with what does social distancing mean when there is no real distancing, certainly in the cities. So I think it's going to be a period where it's going to be a big mess.
And that's very true. Because we don't know. Because every state's going to be different. Arizona may be different than, say, Utah. Utah may be different than Texas. Texas is going to be different than California. California may be way different than New York. We don't know what it looks like. So it's hard to put some sort of what it's like going to bounce back and snap and boom and away we go.
September, possibly, I think. You'll see some things economically return. I think people will be going back to work by Labor Day. And to anyone who thinks that this economy is going to bounce, it can't. The damage that's being done is catastrophic.
Yeah. And it's going to be ugly. 2008, you'll wish for 2008. You'll wish for 2008. I've been saying it. People are like, no. Look, there are going to be some companies out there. They're going to bounce back. They're going to change some of their business models. They'll survive through here. But a majority of companies and a lot of individuals out there are facing some stuff that's coming that is going to be huge. And that trickle down effect that, you'd say, well, it's a tsunami. It's going to be a tsunami effect.
You have to have widespread bankruptcies because you have no revenue, essentially, for an enormous number of businesses. And I think that established businesses, Expedia, which had basically a $10 billion cost base, went from a day when it would have $250 million in sales to basically zero. But of course, you're going to have a massive amount of businesses that can't return, businesses that go bankrupt. It's inevitable. And hopefully the government will, so to speak, pick up the tab.
Barry Diller. He's right. And some businesses and business owners that are choosing, hey, I'm going to punt. I did well, but at this point in time, I don't know what it looks like on the other side, because I've talked to several business owners that even if they can make it through this, which some of them can, they say, I don't know if I can make it through another one. And I don't know if there's going to be another one, another shutdown, another situation where we all have to shelter in place. I don't know. And I'd rather take what I have left and regroup. And once we come out on the other side, then look to maybe do something else. And you'll find a lot of entrepreneurs and business people that will do something like that. But then you've got things like restaurants. I was driving this weekend and take Jack home. As I'm driving, I was listening to a restaurateur, one of the bigger ones in D.C. and New York, and he's got a ton of restaurants all over the place. And he says, we can't open up the way that I think government thinks that, okay, well, if we open up tomorrow, you're going to have social distancing in there. And the way that social distancing is going to work is you may have half the tables. And he starts, going over the things that some people are, you're hearing. I heard from our Governor Ducey here last week, and I've heard it from Newsom, and I've heard it from Cuomo. It's like, well, it'll be half the tables, and people will be wearing masks, and, which is not appetizing at all. But every one of those tables represents a profit point. And restaurants' profit point is very, very slim. And this guy's like, my most popular dish, we make about 70 cents on my most popular dish in some of my restaurants. So you're talking about 3 to 4, maybe 5 to 7% margin. And if you're going to cut off half the tables and think you're bringing back the entire staff, you're fooling yourself. That's not a winning scenario that can happen. It is going to take time for us to get back into the flow of things. And that may take 6 months. It may take a year or two. Every month that we go on like this, you can usually tack on another 12 months it's going to take to get back pre-coronavirus. Vaccine, not 100% sure. So we're not 100% sure on a vaccine. We're not, at this moment in time, at a place where we know we have a therapeutic treatment that will work. And then there's the immunity side of things. Do you or don't you have immunity like you do in so many other things?
It could be as long as years. We have to remember this virus is barely 5 months old, and we need a considerable period of time to study this. We do know, though, based on other coronaviruses, same family, that you can become temporarily immune, and then that immunity wanes.
It's Dr. Jen Ashton. So, like the World Health Organization is like, well, we've got no studies that say that you're immune, you can't catch it again. And I'm like, I no longer listen to you guys. The World Health Organization. I'm putting it out there. I no longer listen to anything you guys have to say because you guys are full of crap. You're an organization, much like the UN, that is just an absolute joke. It is. But will that help? Will herd immunity help? Possible. I mean, we're all trying to get to the same place. Some people want to shelter in place until we find a vaccine. Some people think, okay, well, how about just the elderly and the sick? They shelter in place. And some people say, well, once we get a treatment, we can all go out. Everybody's going to have to make up their own minds. But at some point in time, the breaking point not only comes from going stir crazy, but also there's a breaking point that comes when you start to look and see what your financial situation's like. But that's only as good as what everybody else is. So if you have a small business and you think you're going to go out of business soon and you may not be able to survive, you opening up your doors today doesn't mean people are going to come, doesn't mean people are going to have money. And even if they do, doesn't mean they're going to spend, which is something that, again, we forget. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. I promised you a great soundbite. This is Ron DeSantis. He's like the governor talking of Florida, talking about, well, nursing homes.
Florida is ground zero for the nursing home. I mean, we're God's waiting room. We have a huge number of facilities, a huge number of residents.
What do you do with that? What are you again?
Florida is ground zero for the nursing home. I mean, we're God's waiting room.
We're God's waiting room. If you look at the numbers, and that's something that, especially in certain areas, like California was one, out here in Arizona, some of the build up that's everybody's crammed together. Confined-ish area. People that are sick in places because of food plants and manufacturing, the food facilities, they get sick. They're in a confined area. Same thing for jails and nursing homes. And a lot of these, especially when you see a jump in deaths and you start to look and say, okay, X amount of people died here. It was a nursing home. It spread like wildfire. Yes, Florida is God's waiting room. Florida's a lot of things. God's waiting room is one of them. But old are very susceptible to this. We have seen that. Look at the amount of nursing homes and how it has gone through there and just eviscerated 50, 60, 70 patients like that. Confined area, nowhere to go, people close to one another, already in a bad situation, usually with frail health, and it's just picking off. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show's your Twitter. You can tweet at me, Car Shield. So I've got an older car. Right, I take that a little bit longer drives. Have no electronics like, it has just a regular radio and stuff, but there's no touch screen or any of that stuff. I've got Car Shield on it because I worry about the transmission and stuff like that. On the other side of things, I've got something more modern, newer, and it does have the touchscreen. Car Shield on both, because the reality is, if something goes wrong, those things are expensive to fix. Car Shield has me covered. With Car Shield, I get 24/7 roadside assistance, a rental car for free while my car's in the shop. And that shop, well, it's a shop that I choose, not them. They get them paid directly. I pay a small deductible. It's beautiful. You call them up. Rates start as low as $99 a month. There's no long-term contracts or commitments. You call them up and you explain to them exactly what you're looking for, what you have, what your worry is, and they've got a price that fits your budget. 800-CAR-6000, mention code Benson. That's 800-CAR-6000. Code Benson saves you 10%. Or you can go to carshield.com, carshield.com. Use that code Benson to save 10%. A deductible may apply. Chad Benson Show.
Set Chad straight. Text the show, 323-538-2423. That's 323-538-CHAD. Someone has to do it. Might as well be you. The Chad Benson Show.
The White House coronavirus task force briefing scheduled for this evening has been canceled. Instead, President Trump's meeting with retail CEOs at the White House will be open to reporters. This would mark the third day in a row with no task force briefing. The president on Friday left the podium without taking questions from reporters. Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany today told reporters there may be a new focus to the daily briefings, but insisted the changes are not because officials view them as damaging to the president.
The president, this has been an opportunity to speak directly to the American people. We think they've been great.
I don't think they've been great. I think at times they've been helpful. But a lot of it is a battle of Trump and the press. And I don't think they've been great. I don't think they've helped anybody. Some of that has been on Trump. Some of that's been on the media. But a lot of what we're looking for has to do mostly with the scientists and the doctors. And let Trump handle the business side of stuff. I think that's great. You brought Pence in. You said you're going to be the czar, the head. You're going to lead this thing. We need to hear more from him. And you go and direct the people. Directly to the people. Give a 5 or 10 minute briefing if you want to at night, like 9 o'clock. The whole country could see you. But the battle between everybody, I don't think any of us need it. And I think it's better that they start shifting focus. He talks about 60% of the time, and we want to hear from the president. We do. I want to hear what he has to say. What I don't want is name calling and arguing and this kind of question and that kind of question. I don't think it does anybody any good. I think the best thing that we could do is have a refocus in a much different area and go from there. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Feel free to tweet at me. Are you getting a new critter during this sheltering in place?
This is Jim Ryan. As coronavirus began to spread around the nation, animal welfare officials were concerned about a surge in dogs and cats being turned over to shelters. That might still happen, but for right now, the opposite has occurred. Pet adoptions have soared as Americans seek some companionship in their self-isolation.
Chickens, too. You've seen this? Like, they're selling so many chickens because people want fresh eggs. And so chickens are just absolutely, people are buying them left, right, and center. On top of that, if you're worried about chickens and you say, I don't know if I really want one, I don't know if I make that commitment. I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of commitment. You can actually rent a chicken and a chicken coop to see if this is something that you're ready for. Maybe that kind of commitment could be too much for you. I don't know. I get a lot of chickens. I do get some little chicks, but those have nothing to do with me having eggs. They have all to do with big critters that I have who enjoy some chicken every now and then. Chad. It's nature, kids. I don't take pleasure in it. Is what it is. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. We made it through another pandemic Monday, as we knew we would, because that's who we are and that's what we do. Things will get better. They're going to be great, and it's going to take some time. Have a good rest of your day. Smile a lot. We'll do it again tomorrow. Night-night, Jack.
This is the Chad Benson Show.